Every morning, I wake up at 5 o'clock. Not because I can't sleep. My sleep has always been sound, even now at 63. I just love these mornings when Hueytown is still napping and I can have a cup of strong tea and get ready for the day. My store opens at 9, but I'm there by 8 to check out merchandise, look through new product catalogs, and tidy up the display case. 32 years ago, Robert and I opened Thorne's Reliable Appliances on Center Street, and I've never regretted that decision since. Robert passed away 7 years ago, a heart attack, sudden and merciless. We were just planning how we would travel after we handed the store over to our son. But Lloyd was never interested in the family business. As a teenager, he'd wrinkled his nose when I asked him to help with inventory, and after college, he'd gone straight to the big city. He didn't return to Hueytown until after his father's death, and not for long. He said he was suffocating here. However, when he lost his job at an insurance company 4 years ago, he suddenly remembered his hometown. I came with my new wife Darcy, who looked at me from day one as an unfortunate obstacle. I wipe down the counter and smile at my reflection in the polished surface of the microwave. Wrinkles, gray hair gathered into a simple bundle, but the eyes are still the same bright, attentive. Robert always said it was the eyes that attracted him at the dance the night we met. "Your eyes see right through people, Freddie," he laughed. And he was right. I'm a really good judge of character. Maybe that's why my store is still thriving, even though 2 chain electronics hypermarkets have opened in Hueytown. The bell above the door jingles and Martha Simpson enters, my first customer of the day and a loyal customer for 20 years. "Good morning, Winifred. You're an early bird as usual." She smiled, adjusting her thick-rimmed glasses. "Good morning, Martha. What brings you in today? I trust your coffee machine is still going strong?" "Oh, it's still going strong. Best purchase I've made in years, but the toaster's starting to fail. Remember when I bought it from you? God forbid I remember." 12,012, I said. 12 years is a long time for a toaster. Modern appliances usually last much less than that. Martha shakes her head. "That's why I only go to you. You don't sell cheap stuff that will break in a year. You can recommend something reliable." I walk Martha over to the toaster stand, talking about the pros and cons of each model. It's not just a sales pitch. It's a conversation between two acquaintances who trust each other. In big stores, salespeople memorize specifications from catalogs and repeat them like parrots. I know my product because I use it myself, testing every new model before I put it on sale. After Martha leaves, the store slowly fills up with other customers. Even though it's Tuesday, not the busiest day of the week, by lunchtime I'm selling 2 vacuum cleaners, a microwave, and a few small kitchen appliances. My strength is that I remember what each customer bought last time and can suggest add-ons or replacements when the time comes. People appreciate that kind of attention, especially the elderly who are often ignored in larger stores. At lunchtime, I close the store for an hour and go to a small cafe across the street. It serves great soup and fresh bread, and best of all, the owner, Jenny, always has a table for me by the window, where I can see the entrance to my store. "Hi, Winnie," Jenny waves at me from behind the counter. "Your table's free. It's pumpkin soup tonight, your favorite." I nod gratefully and settle into my seat. I'm just about to unwrap my napkin when I see a familiar car pull up in front of the store. Lloyd's silver sedan. What does he want in the middle of the day? He usually only shows up at the store on weekends when he needs money or free appliances. Lloyd pulls the doorknob, realizes it's locked, and pulls out his phone. A few seconds later, my cell phone rings. "Mom, where are you?" "The store's closed." "I'm at lunch, Lloyd. The usual 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. "And you're really closing the store for an hour? How do you even survive with that approach to business?" He sounds annoyed. "Okay, I need to talk to you. Darcy and I will stop by tonight. I'll be home around 7. You can come over afterward." "Mom, we can't accommodate your schedule. We have our own things to do. We'll be home at 6 o'clock. Be home." He hangs up before I can answer. It's always like this. My time is worthless and his is priceless. Jenny puts a bowl of soup in front of me and smiles understandingly. "Did your son call? I can see it in your face. He's coming tonight. Probably needs money again." "Winnie, you're too good to him. After he sold his father's coin collection." "I know, Jenny, but he's my only child." Jenny just sighs and walks away to the other customers. She's right. I've forgiven Lloyd too much. I think back to a year ago when I discovered Robert's antique coin collection was missing. Lloyd swore he'd only taken them to show a numismatist friend. But I saw a check from an antique store that had accidentally fallen out of his jacket. Almost $5,000 for a collection that was worth 10 times that. And that's not the only incident. I returned to the store with a heavy heart. What does he want this time? The last conversation with Lloyd was 2 weeks ago when he came to borrow a steamer for Darcy. She stood behind the counter looking at the expensive coffee machines while Lloyd convinced me that they would just borrow the steamer. I knew they wouldn't return it, just like they hadn't returned the blender, toaster, and a dozen other appliances borrowed on loan over the years. This store is a relic of the past, Mom, Lloyd said then, lowering his voice. You need to think about the future. What's going to happen to you in 5 or 10 years? I think about it every day, son, I replied, and I see myself behind that counter. Stubbornness is an age thing, he sighed, as if he were talking to a cranky child. Darcy's right. You should consider a nursing home where professionals can take care of you. At that moment, Darcy turned toward us just as she heard her name. Her thin lips stretched into a fake smile. What are you two whispering about? Mom's senile quirks, Lloyd chuckled. She still thinks she'll be working until she's 100. Darcy gave the store a scornful glance. Appliance Museum needs to close before it starts making a loss. A space in such a nice neighborhood could be sold or rented out. It would be a smart financial move. I didn't say anything, even though I was seething inside. A museum? Losses? My store has brought in a steady income for 30 years. I know every figure in the ledgers, every market trend, but all they see in me is an old woman with quirks. The afternoons pass quietly. I go several times into the back room where I have a safe with documents. I check bank statements, reread the lease agreement. Everything's in order, but the feeling lingers. Lloyd's up to something, and I'm not gonna like it. At 5 o'clock, I close the store and drive home. A small, one-story house in a quiet neighborhood, 15 minutes from the center. After Robert died, I sold our big house and bought this smaller one, putting the difference into the business and saving it for a rainy day. Lloyd was furious. He expected me to give him the money from the sale because you don't need a house that big all by yourself. As if the house belonged only to me and not to Robert and I, who had built it with our own hands. At home, I take a quick shower and prepare a light dinner of salad and baked fish. I always watched my diet, unlike Robert, who loved fat and sweets. Maybe that's why I'm still active and full of energy, despite my age. No pills, just vitamins and daily exercise. At 6 sharp, Lloyd is always punctual when he needs something. I hear the sound of a car pulling up. A minute later, the doorbell rings, even though my son has a key. Another petty disrespect to show that he is a stranger in this house. I open the door. Lloyd stands on the threshold, tall, balding, so much like Robert in his youth, but without his kindness and honesty. Behind him is Darcy, slender, with perfect hair and manicure, but with cold eyes and a perpetually disgruntled expression. Hi, Mom. Lloyd kisses me on the cheek. His perfume is too pungent and I wince. We won't be long. We have dinner with friends at 8. Come on in. I step aside. I'm just finishing dinner. Would you like some tea? No time for tea, Darcy says, walking into the living room and eyeing my old but comfortable chairs with a critical eye. We're having an important conversation. Lloyd gives his wife a warning glance. Darcy's right, Mother. We need to have a serious talk about your future. I'm listening, I said calmly, though I was growing anxious inside. Lloyd sits down across from me, leaning forward, taking my hands in his, a gesture he uses when he wants to appear sincere. Mom, Darcy and I are very worried about you. You're still working all day, lugging heavy boxes of equipment, doing the bookkeeping. It's a lot of work for a woman your age. I'm doing just fine, Lloyd. For now, yes. But what about a year from now, 2 years from now? Time spares no one, Mother. Darcy sighed impatiently. Winifred, you must think of the future. Your entire fortune has been invested in this store. What if you fall ill? Who will run it? Who will pay your bills? I have health insurance and savings, I said, and I'm not going to get sick. No one is. Lloyd squeezes my hands again. But we have to be prepared for anything. That's why I'm proposing a power of attorney for me. I'll help you with finances, payments, taxes. You won't have to worry about a thing. That's it. Power of attorney. Access to all my accounts and assets. I'm very good with finances, son. I've always kept the store's books myself. That was back in the day, Mom. Now it's all automated, computer programs, online banking. It's complicated for people of your generation. I've been using online banking for 10 years, I remind her. And I've been ordering stuff online myself. Darcy rolls her eyes. Winifred, you don't know what we're talking about. We want to protect you and your assets. There are so many scammers preying on the elderly these days. With power of attorney, Lloyd can monitor your accounts, review every transaction, and decide how to spend my money? I'm asking you straight up. Mom! Lloyd looks insulted. How can you think that? I'm your son. I only want to help. I look into his eyes. Once I'd seen the curiosity of a little boy helping his father fix toasters and radios. Now there's just cold calculation. But I know my son. If I turn him down outright, he'll find another way to get his hands on my money. Maybe I should take him up on it and see what he does next. I'll think about your offer, Lloyd, I finally say. Give me a few days. He's obviously unhappy that he didn't immediately agree, but he hides his irritation. Sure, Mom, think it over. But don't take too long. The sooner we get the paperwork done, the better I'll feel about you. Darcy glanced at her watch and rose. We have to go or we'll be late for dinner. Lloyd kissed my cheek again and whispered goodbye. It's for your own good, Mom. Trust me. I nod and close the door behind them. In the silence of the empty house, all I can hear is the ticking of the old clock, a gift from Robert for our 10th anniversary. He always said, trust, but verify. And I will. See what they're really up to, my son and his greedy wife. And then I'll decide what to do next. For 3 days after Lloyd and Darcy's visit, I pondered their proposal. Every evening, sitting on the veranda with a cup of tea, I replayed our conversation in my head, analyzing every word, every gesture. Something was bothering me. My son's concern seemed contrived, too insistent. And Darcy, she didn't even try to hide her interest in my finances. On Thursday, after closing up store, I didn't go straight home, but dropped in on an old family friend, Hugh Pearson, the lawyer who had handled our affairs when Robert was alive. Hugh was retired, but he made an exception for old clients. A power of attorney to handle all the finances? He frowned as he listened to me. Winnie, this is a big step. Are you sure you want to give Lloyd that kind of power? No, I'm not, I answered honestly. But I need to know what he'll do once he has access to my accounts. Hugh took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose tiredly. Don't you think it's too risky? If you don't trust your son, why give him control of your money? Because if I say no, he'll find another way. I'd rather know what he's planning. Classic Winifred. Hugh shook his head, always wanting to be in control. All right, I'll help you draw up a limited power of attorney. It will give Lloyd access to your accounts, but with certain restrictions. For example, he can't withdraw or transfer more than $1,000 without your written consent. I've been thinking. Restrictions would make Lloyd wary. He'd realize I didn't trust him. No, Hugh. Make a simple power of attorney, but, can you tell me how I can keep track of what he's doing? Hugh spent a long time explaining to me about bank alerts, online account monitoring, and other ways of monitoring. I listened intently, memorizing every detail. When we finished, he looked at me with concern. Winnie, I've known you for almost 40 years. You've always been a smart and careful woman, but now you're playing with fire. Be prepared to be burned. I am ready, Hugh. Sometimes you have to take a risk to find out the truth. I called Lloyd this evening and told him I'd accepted the power of attorney. He was delighted. That's great, Mama. I'll bring the papers over tomorrow. You won't regret it, you'll see. The next day, Lloyd arrived at the store an hour before closing time. He didn't bring Darcy. I guess he thought her presence might make me suspicious. That's smart. I've got everything ready. He placed a folder of paperwork on the counter. I just need you to sign it. I've already consulted a lawyer, and everything's in order. What lawyer? I asked, pretending I was just curious. Our corporate lawyer, the insurance company, Lloyd answered casually. I flipped through the pages slowly, pretending to read carefully. In fact, thanks to Hugh, I already knew what should be in a properly drafted power of attorney. What exactly are you going to do with my finances? I asked, looking up from the papers. For starters, I'll analyze your expenses, optimize your payments, maybe find better terms on your bank accounts, Lloyd said smoothly, like a business presentation. Then we'll see how we can increase the profitability of the store, or, he paused, look at alternative uses for the premises. You mean selling or leasing? I asked directly. Mom, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Lloyd frowned slightly. We need to analyze everything thoroughly first. I nodded and continued to look through the documents. Finally, I picked up a pen and signed all the necessary pages. Lloyd immediately picked up the folder as if he was afraid I'd change my mind. Thank you, Mom. You made the right decision. He hugged me, and for a moment I thought I saw genuine concern in his eyes. But maybe it was just a play of light. I'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about bills, taxes, and other bureaucracy anymore. When he left, I closed the store and sat at the counter for a long time, looking at Robert's picture that stood next to the cash register. What would he say about my decision? Would he approve, or would he think it was reckless? You've always been a better judge of character than me, Freddie, I said, as if I could hear his voice. Trust your intuition. And my intuition was telling me to be on guard. The next day, I installed the bank's instant notification app on my phone for any account transactions. Hugh helped me set it up so Lloyd wouldn't know about the notifications. Now I could see his every move. For the first week, nothing happened. Lloyd called a few times, asking about business, about my health, saying he was reviewing my financial records. I answered calmly, showing no suspicion. Saturday night, just as I was about to close up store, Darcy came in. Alone, without Lloyd, unusual for her. Winifred, I need some advice, she began with a fake smile. Lloyd wants to get me a kitchen appliance for my anniversary. What would you recommend? It all depends on what you need, Darcy. I tried to sound friendly. Maybe a multi-cooker or a good coffee machine? A coffee machine sounds tempting. Darcy walked over to the display case with the most expensive models. This one looks good. How much is it? $480, but it's worth it. Automatic cappuccinator, adjustable strength, the ability to use both ground coffee and beans. I'll take it, Darcy interrupted. Put it on Lloyd's tab. Darcy, if it's a gift from him, shouldn't he buy it? I asked cautiously. Oh, Winifred, Darcy laughed. What difference does it make? Lloyd manages your finances now, so your money is family money. Don't worry. He approved everything. I silently packed the coffee machine. This is the first test. If I refused, Darcy would complain to Lloyd, and he'd start asking questions about my trust in him. If I say yes, I set a precedent. All right, I said finally. I'll write it down as a gift from you and Lloyd. Darcy brightened. That's good. And by the way, Lloyd and I were thinking, since you're trusting us with your finances, maybe you could give us a spare key to the store. Anything can happen, and we'll always be there to help. Now it made sense to me why she was really here. The coffee machine was just an excuse. I have Patty, I said, referring to the girl who sometimes filled in for me at the store. She has a key and she lives 3 blocks away, but thanks for the offer. Darcy's face stiffened and her smile became strained. Whatever you say. But think about it, Winifred. We're family. After she left, I called the bank and set up additional security on my account. Not just a password, but a code that came to my phone for large transactions. I didn't tell Lloyd about it. The power of attorney technically gave him the authority to handle the accounts. But it didn't change the bank's own security rules. As I drove home, I thought back to when Robert and I had started our business. Back then, in the early 90s, many people thought we were crazy to open a small appliance store when huge shopping centers were sprouting up all around us. Our advantage is our personalized approach, Robert said. We will know each customer by name, remember what he bought last time, offer exactly what he needs. And he was right. Our store survived when many of the big chains were closing. Even in the age of online shopping, we still had loyal customers who valued our advice and after-sales service. Robert died suddenly. A heart attack right in the store. among his favorite fixtures and tools. I was by his side trying CPR, but the doctor said he didn't have a chance. Aortic aneurysm, instant death. After he died, a lot of people said I should sell the business. A woman your age needs to rest, not work 12 hours a day, they said. But the store was my whole life, Robert and I's brainchild. I couldn't just give it up. And now Lloyd and Darcy want to take it away from me, under the guise of caring, under the guise of helping, but I'm not going down without a fight. At home, I went through all the latest bank statements, bills, tax returns. Everything was in perfect order. I've always been meticulous with my paperwork. Then I pulled out a folder with the deeds to the store and the house. I found out that Lloyd would need my signature to sell the commercial property or terminate the lease, even with a power of attorney. That calmed me down a bit. The next 2 weeks went relatively smoothly. Lloyd called regularly, asking about business, saying he was in the process of optimizing my accounts. I pretended not to suspect anything, though I knew he was looking into my finances, assessing how much money I had, where it was, how it could be used. One evening, when I was about to leave the store, the phone rang. It was the bank. A polite male voice said that there was an attempt to transfer a large sum of money from my account, and they needed my confirmation. What kind of transfer? I asked, feeling my heart start to beat faster. To Lloyd Thorne's account, $15,000. He has power of attorney to manage your finances, but we need your personal approval for such a large sum. $15,000. Exactly the amount I recently received from the sale of my old shop equipment. Did Mr. Thorne explain the purpose of the transfer? I asked as calmly as I could. He said he needed the money to remodel your store. Something about new windows and lighting. Remodeling? I didn't know anything about any remodeling plans. That was an outright lie. I did not authorize this transaction, I said firmly. Please block the transfer. Of course, Mrs. Thorne. We'll reject the transaction. Would you like us to contact Mr. Thorne and explain why? No, I'll talk to him myself. Thank you for calling. I hung up and just sat there staring into space for a few minutes. That's the first try. 15,000. Not the entire amount in the account, but a significant portion. Enough to see if they could access my money. The phone rang again. This time it was Lloyd. Mom? What's going on? Why did the bank reject the transfer? What transfer, son? I decided to pretend I didn't know. For the remodeling of the store, I told you I wanted to update the interior, make it more modern. You didn't tell me any of that, Lloyd. My voice remained calm. And 15,000 is a lot of money for a makeover. Mom, I thought we agreed that I would manage your finances. That means making decisions that benefit your business. Managing, yes, but not spending such sums without my knowledge. Lloyd sighed with feigned patience. Okay, next time I'll explain my plans in more detail. But this money is really necessary for the reconstruction. You want the store to look modern, don't you? I'll think about it, Lloyd. But next time, please talk to me first about such a large expense. Of course, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't explain everything beforehand. He said a quick goodbye and hung up. I knew he was angry, but he was trying to hide it. And I also knew that he wasn't planning any remodeling of the store. The money was earmarked for something else. At home, I checked all the security settings on the bank accounts. I beefed up security wherever I could without drawing Lloyd's attention. Then I called Hugh and told him what had happened. Winnie, this is just the beginning, he warned. Now Lloyd knows he can't just take the money without your knowledge. He'll think of something else. I'll be ready, Hugh. Maybe we should revoke the power of attorney, now that you know his true intentions. No, not yet. I want to see what he does next. After I spoke to Hugh, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I tossed and turned in bed thinking about Lloyd, how he'd changed over the years. Once he had been a sweet boy who helped in the store, interested in how things worked, happy when he could fix broken appliances. What happened to that kid? When did he turn into this cold, calculating man who only sees his own mother as a source of money? Maybe it's my fault. Maybe Robert and I spoiled him too much, always gave him what he wanted, never said no? No, it's not just that. A lot of kids grow up well off, but they don't turn out like Lloyd. It's about the choices he made on his own, the choices he made every day of his adult life. After the incident with the attempted money transfer, Lloyd became more cautious. For a few weeks, he didn't take any suspicious actions, calling regularly, inquiring about the store's business, even stopping by a couple times to check on things. I pretended to believe his explanations about the remodeling, and our relationship outwardly returned to normal. One morning, I woke up with a headache. My blood pressure had spiked, as it had been lately. Nothing serious, but I decided to take the day off and rest. I called Patty, asked her to cover for me at the store, took a pill, and lay down. By noon, the pain was gone, and I decided to take a walk. Fresh air always helped me better than any medicine. Hueytown was a small town, and all the important places were in the center, a few blocks away from each other. I walked down the main street, nodding to people I knew, occasionally stopping to chat. As I passed the bank, I suddenly noticed a familiar car in the parking lot, a silver Lloyd sedan. Strange. Lloyd never went to the bank on weekdays. He worked as a consultant for an insurance company in a neighboring town and was usually busy into the evening. What was he doing here on a Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? I paused in indecision. Should I come in? Or would it look like I was following him? But curiosity and anxiety took over. I pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the cool, air-conditioned air of the bank. It wasn't crowded inside. A couple of elderly customers at the counter, a young mom with a baby in the corner filling out some paperwork. And at the far counter, Lloyd and Darcy were having a lively conversation with the manager. I quickly retreated behind a column, trying to remain unnoticed. I had a clear view from my seat, but they couldn't see me. Lloyd was saying something, gesturing vigorously. Darcy was nodding. And the manager, it was Peter Ellington, who had been serving me for years, was frowning and shaking his head. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could tell by the gestures and facial expressions that there was a serious argument going on. Finally, Peter nodded reluctantly, pulled out some papers, and began to fill them out. Lloyd smiled victoriously at Darcy, and she squeezed his hand in return. After a few minutes, Peter got up and left for the back room. He returned with a large stack of bills, which he began to count, separating the stacks and taping them together with bank tape. Lloyd looked around nervously, and Darcy kept her eyes on the money, her hands tapping impatiently on the counter. I could feel my heart beating faster and faster. This is my money. They're taking my money. Peter finished recounting, wrote something down on the computer, then asked Lloyd to sign some papers. Darcy, meanwhile, was collecting wads of money and putting them into a large bag she held in her lap. Her face, usually indifferent or disgruntled, now glowed with eager delight. She even licked her lips as she accepted the last packet. I instinctively retreated farther behind the column when Lloyd and Darcy finally stood up and headed for the exit. Darcy clutched her bag tightly to her, and Lloyd, holding her under his elbow, hurriedly led the way to the door, still glancing around nervously. I waited until they were out and walked quickly over to Peter's counter. "Hello, Peter. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Peter flinched in surprise. "Mrs. Thorne. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see you today." "I noticed," I replied dryly. "Tell me, Peter, was it my son and his wife? And did they withdraw money from my account?" Peter turned visibly pale. "Mrs. Thorne, you know I can't discuss client transactions." "I am a client, Peter, and this is my money we're talking about." "Your son has power of attorney," Peter reminded her. "He's legally authorized to handle your accounts." "How much, Peter?" I didn't back down. "How much did they withdraw?" Peter looked around, made sure no one could hear us, and said quietly, $75,000, almost your entire primary account. I felt my legs give out. 75,000. All of my savings from the last few years, money set aside for a rainy day, for possible medical expenses, for store renovations. How could they withdraw that much without my consent? Don't they need my approval for large transactions? Normally, yes. Peter looked guilty. But your son came in with a new notarized power of attorney. It specifically authorizes him to withdraw any amount without further authorization from you. And he presented a doctor's note stating that you have, memory and decision-making problems. What? I couldn't believe my ears. That's a total lie. I don't have any memory problems. I understand, Mrs. Thorne, and I personally believe you. But the document looked authentic, stamped and signed by Dr. Harrison. Dr. Harrison is the therapist I've been seeing for the last 15 years. He knew perfectly well that I was of sound mind and good judgment. That document could only be a forgery. Peter, you've known me for so many years. Did you really believe that I was suddenly incapacitated? I tried to call you to confirm, Mrs. Thorne, honestly, but your son said you weren't feeling well, and you were resting at home, that he was acting in your best interests, and he had all the documentation he needed. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I see, Peter. Thank you for the information. One more question. Do I have any other accounts? Any savings? There's a restricted retirement account that can't be cashed out without serious penalties. And there's an escrow account that Mr. Thorne set up for you, your husband, not your son, years ago. There's about $20,000 in there. Your son doesn't seem to know about it since he hasn't mentioned it. Robert. Even after his death, he continued to take care of me. That escrow account was our secret. Emergency money that only the two of us knew about. Don't tell Lloyd about this account, please, I asked. And if he comes to withdraw money again, find a way to contact me directly, okay? Of course, Mrs. Thorne. I'm so sorry. If I had known. It's not your fault, Peter. It was my fault for trusting my son too much. As I left the bank, I didn't know what to do next. I was filled with anger, resentment, disappointment. How could Lloyd do this? Forge a medical report? Defraud the bank? Steal my money? I noticed their car was still parked in the parking lot a little farther away from the entrance, so they must be close by. Without thinking, I walked down the street, peering into the windows of stores and cafes. And in the window of Marco's restaurant, I saw them. They were sitting at a table at the back of the room, still with the bag that now stood between them. I walked in and asked for a table near them, behind a column. The waitress ushered me in and handed me a menu, but I declined, asking only for a cup of tea. I didn't care about food. I wanted to hear what they were saying. I couldn't see them well from my seat, but I could hear their voices clearly. They were talking animatedly, not caring much about being overheard. Perfect time to sell, Darcy said. Downtown real estate prices are at their peak right now. We'll get at least $400,000 for the storefront, maybe more. We'd have to get Mom to sign the deed first, Lloyd said. A power of attorney wasn't enough. After Dr. Wilson examines her and confirms the diagnosis of early-stage dementia, we can arrange guardianship, and then we won't need any of her signatures. I almost dropped my cup. They're planning on declaring me incompetent? Guardianship? The important thing is that she doesn't suspect anything, Lloyd continued. Tomorrow I'll tell her I need the money to prepay the suppliers to update the store's inventory. She'll believe it. She always does when it comes to her precious store. And then we'll leave? Darcy's voice sounded impatient. I can't stay in this hole any longer, waiting so many years for your mother to finally make way. Darcy, be quiet, Lloyd urged her. As soon as we sell the store and get custody, we'll leave. I've already looked at a house in Florida, on the coast. Warm climate, ocean, just like you wanted. What about her? Darcy asked without much interest. Sun Valley Nursing Home. I've already arranged for them to take her as soon as we get the paperwork done. Basic care is covered by her health insurance, and she won't have the money for more than that. And no remorse? Darcy snorted. She is your mother after all, who always loved her store more than she loved me, Lloyd said, a lingering resentment in his voice. All I ever heard growing up was store, customers, business. Even on weekends, all he and my father talked about was work. And now it was time to get what was due me. I sat there, numb with shock and pain. Did Lloyd really think that? That Robert and I loved the store more than him? It wasn't true. We adored our boy, proud of his every accomplishment, supportive of his every endeavor. Yes, we worked hard, but for what? To provide him with a good education, opportunities we didn't have. When are we meeting Dr. Wilson? Darcy asked, bringing me back to reality. Friday. He's coming to my mom's house, ostensibly for a routine checkup. Insurance covers home visits for elderly clients. And he'll confirm the diagnosis? For $20,000, he'll confirm anything. Lloyd grinned. Then we'll file the paperwork through the courts, and we'll be done. In a month, we'll be basking on a beach in Florida, and Mom will be watching TV in the Sun Valley Common Room. I quietly paid and walked out of the restaurant without waiting for them to notice me. I felt dizzy and nauseous. As if in a fog, I reached my store. Patty looked at me in surprise. Mrs. Thorne? I thought you said you were resting today. Change of plans, Patty. Thanks for filling in for me. You can go. I can handle it. As soon as Patty left, I locked the store door and put up the closed for technical reasons sign. I needed to think, to decide what to do next. My first impulse was to call Lloyd, to tell him what I thought of him, to demand a refund. But reason prevailed over emotion. If I revealed that I knew what they were up to, they'd just speed up the process. And I had no proof, just an overheard conversation they could easily deny. I called Hugh. After hearing my story, he was silent for a long time. Winnie, this is serious. Forgery of medical records, fraud, attempted illegal guardianship. We could go to the police. And say what, Hugh? That I overheard my son talking in a restaurant? I have no proof. Besides, technically, with power of attorney, he had the right to withdraw that money. But not to falsify medical reports. That's a felony. First, we need to get a copy of this report, I sighed. Prove that it's fake. I could try, Hugh suggested. I have contacts at the bank. Thank you, Hugh, but I don't want to cause trouble for Peter. He feels guilty enough as it is. Then what are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I'm not going to let them take away everything I've spent my life building. I'm not going to let them lock me in a nursing home while they spend my money. After talking to Hugh, I sat in the empty store for a long time, contemplating the situation. Lloyd and Darcy had taken almost all of my savings. Soon they would try to sell the store and send me to Sun Valley, a dismal place on the outskirts of town where lonely old people who had been abandoned by their families lived out their days. I was left with a deposit account that Lloyd didn't know about and a retirement account that he couldn't easily cash out. But it wasn't enough to start a new life or fight them legally. I looked around the store, the racks of appliances I'd picked out myself from suppliers, the counter polished to a high shine, Robert's pictures on the wall. All of this they were going to take away from me. And then it hit me. I still had my biggest asset, the store. More specifically, the storefront space I'd bought years ago when real estate prices in downtown Hueytown were ridiculous. It was worth a lot more now, as Darcy had correctly pointed out. And neither Lloyd nor Darcy knew one important detail. The title to the premises was not in my name, but in the name of Thorne Electronics, where I was the sole founder and director. The power of attorney I gave to Lloyd covered my personal finances, but not the company. The sale of commercial real estate owned by the company required a board resolution and my signature as a director. Lloyd could not sell the store premises without my consent, even if he had taken custody of me as an individual. That gave me time and room to maneuver. But what next? How do I stop their plan to declare me incapacitated? How do I get back the money they stole? How do I punish them for their betrayal? I realized that simply confronting them would accomplish nothing. If I simply refused to sign the paperwork to sell the store, they would find another way. If I accused them of fraud without hard evidence, they'd deny everything. I needed a plan. A carefully thought out, flawless plan that would not only protect me, but let them know that betrayal always has a price. I locked up the store and drove home. On the way, I stopped at the drugstore for a sedative. I was going to need it today. I also bought a new cell phone, a basic cell phone with a prepaid card. If Lloyd decided to check my calls, he couldn't know who I was talking to. At home, I brewed some strong tea and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. A plan was slowly forming in my head. Dangerous, risky, but perhaps the only true one in this situation. I started writing names, dates, necessary actions. By midnight, the plan was ready. I burned the sheets in the sink, washed the ashes off with water, and went to bed. In the morning, Lloyd called, just as I expected. "Mom, how are you feeling? Patty said you had a headache last night." "I'm better now, thank you." I tried to speak as usual, hiding the storm of emotions. "That's great. Listen, I'll stop by your place on Friday. I want to introduce you to a good doctor who specializes in the health of the elderly, just for a checkup." "That won't be necessary, Lloyd. I just saw Dr. Harrison and everything's fine. Harrison is a general internist, and Dr. Wilson is a specialist in age-related changes. It's important, Mom." "Okay," I agreed, knowing that an outright refusal would only make him wary. Friday it is." "That's great. And I also wanted to tell you about prepaying the suppliers. I found a great opportunity to revamp the store's inventory. The latest models of equipment at a 30% discount if you pay in advance. I listened to his lies and thought I didn't recognize my son. Once he was an honest boy who blushed, even when he told an innocent untruth. Now he lied to my eyes without the slightest hesitation. Sounds interesting, I said. Send me the supplier information, and I'll look into it. Why go to all that trouble? I've already organized everything. You have nothing to worry about. I'd still like to see the paperwork. This is my business, Lloyd. Of course, Mom. I'll email you everything. We said goodbye and I hung up. Of course, there would be no paperwork from the vendors because there were no vendors. But it was important that Lloyd didn't suspect that I knew what his real plans were. Now I had to prepare for my meeting with Dr. Wilson and set my plan in motion. A plan that would turn Lloyd and Darcy's lives upside down and make them regret the day they decided to betray their own mother. Friday was 2 days away, and I decided not to waste any time. The first thing I did was to call Hugh from my new phone and ask for an urgent meeting, not in his office, but in a small cafe on the outskirts of town, where we were unlikely to be recognized. Winnie, you're scaring me with these spy games, Hugh said as we settled at the far table. A new phone? A secret meeting? Trust me, Hugh, they're not games. Lloyd and Darcy want to declare me incompetent. They've already forged one medical report and stolen my money. A doctor they bought is coming on Friday to diagnose me with dementia. Hugh turned pale. This is no longer just a family disagreement, but a criminal offense. We have to go to the police. We will, but first I need your help with the paperwork. I laid my plan out on the table. First, a new will. I want to cut Lloyd out of the line of succession. That's easy, Hugh nodded. Who do you want to leave your estate to? I pulled out of my bag a list of charities and the names of a few people who had really cared for me over the years. Patty, my assistant. Jenny from the cafe, the Martins family who lived next door and always came to the rescue. The store and business assets I want to pass on to Patty. She loves the business and will carry on the tradition. The house and personal savings to be divided among the others. And another 10% to the local animal shelter in Robert's memory. He was always feeding stray cats. Hugh wrote down my wishes. All right, the will is settled. What's next? I need to revoke the power of attorney I gave Lloyd. Can I do that retrospectively? Prove that I signed it under duress? Hugh thought, not easy, but possible, especially if he already has a false medical report that you're incapacitated. We can argue that if you're incapacitated now, you were incapacitated when you signed the power of attorney, and therefore the document is invalid. Great, I nodded. The third item is proof of their fraud. I need a copy of that fake medical report. I'll talk to Peter at the bank, Hugh said. He's feeling guilty and he'll probably help. But for a full-fledged case, we need recordings of conversations where Lloyd and Darcy discuss their plans. I'm working on it, I replied, showing a small tape recorder I'd bought yesterday at an electronics store in a neighboring town. Lloyd is coming tomorrow to discuss the new vendors and their doctor visit on Friday. I'll record both conversations. Winnie, that's risky. If they find the tape recorder, they won't. I'll be careful. We discussed the details of the plan at length. Hugh insisted that I move in with him or other friends until the situation was resolved, but I refused. Running away would look suspicious, and I didn't want to put my friends in danger. The next day, Lloyd arrived. I discreetly turned on my voice recorder when I heard the sound of his car. Mom, what's up? He hugged me and I forced myself not to pull away. How are you feeling? I'm fine, thanks. You wanted to tell me about the new vendors? Yeah, sure. Lloyd pulled out a folder with some printouts. Look, here's a catalog of new models. If we prepay, we can get a big discount. I looked through the papers, just pictures of equipment, downloaded from the internet, no real commercial offers or supplier contacts. It looks interesting, I said, pretending to believe it. How much do you need to pay up front? About $70,000, Lloyd said casually. I've already arranged a transfer from my account so I don't miss the opportunity. $70,000? That's almost all of my savings, Lloyd. But it's a good investment, Mom. You'll get $120,000 worth of merchandise at market prices. Net profit. Over tea, I deliberately started a conversation about the future of the store. You know, Lloyd, I'm thinking of making Patty a partner in the business. She's doing a great job and loves the store almost as much as I do. Lloyd choked on his tea. Partner? Are you kidding me? This store is a family business, which you've never been interested in, I said softly. You've always said that a small store is a relic of the past. That doesn't mean you have to give it to outsiders. Lloyd could barely contain his anger. Mom, you can't make decisions like this without consulting me, especially now that I'm handling your finances. This is still my business, Lloyd, and my decision. We'll talk about it later. He cut him off. After Dr. Wilson has examined you, maybe you should worry less about business and get more rest. When Lloyd left, I checked the tape recorder, and it was clear. There were no direct admissions of fraud, but his reaction to the idea of partnering with Patty and the mention of Dr. Wilson could be part of the overall pattern of evidence. In the evening, I went to Hugh's house to sign the new will. He had already prepared all the documents and invited 2 witnesses, his colleagues who did not know Lloyd and could not be accused of bias. I've also prepared an application to revoke the power of attorney, Hugh said. And I've put together the paperwork to go to the police. As soon as we have recordings of conversations with the doctor and bank statements from Peter, we can make a formal complaint. Friday night, Lloyd and Darcy arrived, and with them a full gray-haired man with a doctor's valise, obviously Dr. Wilson. I discreetly turned on the recorder and invited them into the living room. Mom, this is Dr. Wilson, the age medicine specialist I was telling you about, Lloyd introduced. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Thorne. The doctor shook my hand. Your son is very concerned about your health. I feel fine, Dr. Wilson, I smiled. I have regular checkups with Dr. Harrison. General therapy is good, but as you age, you need a more specialized approach. He pulled out a notebook. Mind if I ask you a few questions? The questions were standard cognitive function tests, current date, the president's name, simple arithmetic problems. I answered clearly and correctly, and a slight confusion appeared on the doctor's face. Obviously, he expected to see a confused old lady, not a focused woman with a clear mind. Mrs. Thorne, have you noticed any memory problems lately? Forgetfulness? Confusion about time? Absolutely none, Dr. Wilson. I remember everything from phone numbers to birthdays of all my clients. Lloyd intervened impatiently. Mom, you forgot how you couldn't find your car keys last week, and you keep asking me the same thing over and over again. I don't remember that, Lloyd, I said firmly, looking him in the eye. Maybe you're confusing me with someone else. The doctor continued his examination, checking my blood pressure, listening to my heart, shining a flashlight into my eyes. All the while, Darcy tapped her foot nervously on the floor, and Lloyd cast expressive glances at the doctor. Well, Mrs. Thorne, physically you're in great shape for your age, the doctor said at last. But there are some cognitive tests I'm concerned about. Which ones, Dr. Wilson? I asked innocently. I thought I had answered all the questions correctly. It's not about the correctness of the answers, but about reaction speed and some behavioral signs, he replied evasively. I would recommend further evaluation at the clinic. Of course, doctor. I'll make an appointment with the neurologist at the Central Hospital. I deliberately named the most prestigious clinic in the area. There's no need to bother busy specialists, the doctor said quickly. I can do all the necessary tests myself in my clinic. Where is your clinic, Dr. Wilson? I asked. And what medical association do you belong to? I'd like to check my insurance coverage. The doctor faltered, casting a helpless look at Lloyd. Mom, don't worry about such small things, Lloyd interjected. I'll pay for everything. The main thing is your health. When they left, I checked the tape recorder and the recording was perfect. The doctor didn't give his registration number or clinic address anywhere, but his confusion and unsure answers were clearly audible. This could have been another piece of evidence in my case. In the morning, Hugh came to pick me up in his car. He brought printouts of the bank records he'd gotten from Peter. It clearly showed how Lloyd had withdrawn $75,000 from my account by presenting a forged medical report. I also got a copy of a power of attorney with your alleged signature on a document lifting restrictions on large transactions, Hugh said. An expert can easily prove that the signature is forged. We drove to the Hueytown police station. The officer on duty, a young fellow named King, listened to our story with growing interest. Mrs. Thorne, these are serious charges, he said when we finished. Forgery, fraud, grand larceny. I'm going to have to turn the case over to Detective Morris, who specializes in these crimes. Detective Morris was a heavy-set, middle-aged man with tired eyes and a keen eye. He questioned me in detail about all the circumstances of the case, scrutinized the documents, and listened to the tapes of conversations. "Impressive work, Mrs. Thorne," he said at last. "You've put together a solid dossier. We can definitely start an investigation." "How soon?" Hugh asked. "We're afraid they'll try again. I'll contact the prosecutor's office today. Given the seriousness of the charges and the evidence, we could have an arrest warrant within days." Days? I couldn't hide my disappointment. What am I supposed to do until then? They stole my money, tried to have me declared incompetent. "I understand your concern, Mrs. Thorne," the detective said gently, "but we have to follow procedure. For now, I can suggest that you get a temporary restraining order prohibiting your son and his wife from coming near you and your property." It was better than nothing. We executed the restraining order, and Detective Morris promised that a patrol car would drive by my house and the store on a regular basis in the coming days. On the way to the store, we stopped by the bank. I wanted to talk to Peter in person and make sure all my remaining accounts were protected. Peter met me with a guilty look on his face. "Mrs. Thorne, I'm so sorry about what happened. If I had known—" "It wasn't your fault, Peter. You followed the rules, but now I need your help to protect what's left of my funds." Peter helped me block all account transactions that required a trustee's authorization. Now Lloyd couldn't access any of my accounts without my personal presence at the bank. When I returned to the store, I found the lock picked and Lloyd and Darcy inside, frantically rummaging through my paperwork. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed as I entered the store with Hugh. "You have no right to be here." Lloyd flinched, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Mom, what are you doing? I have every right to be here. I'm your son and I have power of attorney." "Which is revoked," Hugh said firmly, pulling out the papers. "And here's a restraining order forbidding you to go near Mrs. Thorne and her property." "I'm calling the police," Lloyd's face contorted with rage. "Are you crazy, Mother? Sue me? Your own son?" "Who stole my money and tried to declare me crazy?" I retorted. "Yes, Lloyd, I filed a complaint for fraud and forgery, and I have all the proof I need." Darcy turned pale and tugged on Lloyd's sleeve. "Let's get out of here. Now." "No," Lloyd shook off her arm. "I will not let her ruin all our plans. Mom, you're gonna regret this. You don't know what I'm capable of yet." "I do, Lloyd," I replied quietly. "Unfortunately, I do now." Hugh ended the call to the police. "They're on their way. I suggest you wait for them here, or the charges will be added to resisting arrest." Lloyd hesitated, but Darcy was already dragging him toward the exit. "Now, before they get here." They ran out of the store and sped away in a car before I could say anything. Hugh put his arm around my shoulders. "Don't worry, Winnie. They won't get far. The police will find them." And indeed, 2 hours later, Detective Morris called to say that Lloyd and Darcy had been apprehended trying to leave town. In their car, they found forged documents in my name and a large sum of cash, probably some of the money they had stolen from me. "We've charged them with fraud, forgery, and theft," the detective said. "Given the seriousness of the offenses and the risk of flight, the judge denied bail. They will remain in custody pending trial." I sank into the chair, feeling the tension of the last few weeks finally let go. The plan had worked. Lloyd and Darcy had been caught. Evidence had been collected. My reputation and finances were protected. But I felt no joy, just deep fatigue and sadness at the realization that my only son had been capable of such betrayal. Hugh squeezed my hand. "It's over, Winnie. You can start again now. Without them." I nodded, looking at Robert's picture on the wall of the store. What would he say now? Probably the same thing he always said. "Life goes on, Freddie. No matter what happens, life goes on." The 3 months after Lloyd and Darcy's arrest flew by like a day. Hueytown is a small town, and the news that Winifred Thorne's son and his wife were trying to steal from their own mother and declare her incompetent traveled around the community in a matter of hours. People stopped me on the street, expressing support, offering help. Many people shared similar stories. It turned out that the problem of toxic children is much more widespread than I thought. The court hearings were excruciating. I tried not to look at Lloyd as he was led into the courtroom in handcuffs, but sometimes our gazes crossed. There was no remorse in his eyes, just cold rage and accusation, as if I had betrayed him, not the other way around. Lloyd's lawyer tried to make it look like a misunderstanding, a family conflict blown out of proportion. The son simply wanted to help his aging mother manage her finances, and she stubbornly perceived it as an attack on her autonomy. But the evidence was overwhelming. Forged medical reports, forged signatures on bank documents, taped conversations where Lloyd and Darcy discussed plans to send me to a nursing home and sell the store, and the testimony of Dr. Wilson, who agreed to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence, finally buried the defense. The defendant, Lloyd Thorne, offered me $20,000 for a false report of dementia in his mother, he said, avoiding looking at Lloyd. I accepted because I needed the money. That was my biggest mistake. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all charges. The judge, an elderly woman with shrewd eyes, addressed Lloyd before passing sentence. Mr. Thorne, the law provides particularly harsh punishment for crimes against the elderly, especially when the perpetrator is a family member, the person the victim should trust most. Your actions deserve the maximum penalty. Lloyd received 5 years in prison. Darcy received 3 years probation and 400 hours of community service. In addition, the court ordered them to return all the stolen money with interest and to pay compensation for moral damages. After the verdict was announced, Darcy approached me in the court corridor. Her face, normally haughty, now expressed a mixture of fear and despair. "Winifred, please, you have to help us," she whispered. "Ask for Lloyd's sentence to be commuted. He is your son, your flesh and blood." "You are right, Darcy," I said calmly. "He is my son, and that is why his betrayal hurts the most. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." She recoiled as if I'd struck her and walked away quickly. That was the last time I saw Darcy. Hugh, who'd been there the whole time, put his arm around my shoulders. "Are you all right, Winnie?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. I felt no joy, no relief, just emptiness. "It's okay," Hugh nodded. "You've lost your son, even if he chose that path. It takes time to accept that." At home, I pulled out an old photo album, the one with the pictures of little Lloyd in it. There he is, 3 years old, laughing in Robert's arms. Here's the first day of school, a serious boy with a huge briefcase. Graduation, university, wedding. Where and when did the breaking point occur? At what point did my loving son turn into a man capable of such betrayal? Maybe Robert and I were working too hard. Maybe we didn't pay enough attention to him. Or, on the contrary, too spoiled, always giving him what he wanted? No, it's not that. Many children grew up in similar conditions, but became decent people. Lloyd made his own choices, and now he has to take responsibility for them. I closed the album and put it on the farthest shelf. The past is in the past. It was time to think about the future. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding my finances. The bank recovered the stolen money. The court ordered Lloyd and Darcy to pay compensation. I changed all the passwords, closed old accounts and opened new ones, made sure all the paperwork was in order. Then it was time to take over the store. Despite my advanced age, I felt a surge of energy and a desire to act. Perhaps it was a way of coping with the emotional trauma of diving headfirst into work. I challenged Patty to a serious conversation. "Remember what I said about a partnership? Well, now it's official. I want you to become co-owner of Thorne's reliable machinery." Patty couldn't believe her ears. "Mrs. Thorne, are you serious?" "But I can't buy my share. I don't have that kind of money." "You don't have to buy it back, Patty. You've earned it through hard work and dedication. I'll give you 25% of the business to start with. After 5 years, another 25%, and the rest you'll inherit if you still want to do it." "Yeah, I don't know what to say. It's such an honor." "Tell me you'll do it and that you'll take care of the store when I'm traveling." "Traveling?" Patty was surprised. I smiled. "Yes, girl, I'm 63 and I've never seen Paris. Not Rome, not London, not Tokyo. Robert and I have always put off traveling for later. But I realized that later might never come. It was time to live in the present. That same evening, I began planning my first trip, a 2-week trip through Europe that Robert and I had dreamed of all our lives. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. I made a list of places I wanted to visit, booked hotels, read guidebooks. For the first time in months, I felt truly alive. But before I left, I had one more important thing to do: reorganizing the store. Patty and I decided to update the assortment, adding modern gadgets that interest young people, but keeping the main profile: quality home appliances with warranty and service. We could open an online store, Patty suggested. Many of our customers said they would like to order from us online. It was a good idea. I've always kept up with technology, but I've never really gotten into online shopping. It could greatly expand our customer base. Let's do it, I agreed. But on one condition: we'll keep the personalized approach. Every customer needs to feel cared for, even if they buy a kettle online. Patty promised she would. We hired a web designer who created us a simple but user-friendly website. We photographed all the merchandise and wrote detailed descriptions. To my surprise, the first orders started coming in within a week of launching. You see, Mrs. Thorne? Patty was delighted. People trust your name. Indeed, the reputation of Thorne's reliable appliances worked for us. Many customers left comments that they had been buying from us for years and were glad they could now do so online. Before I left for Europe, I received a letter from Lloyd, the first since the trial. It was short and cold. Mom, I hope you're satisfied that you've ruined my life. Darcy has filed for divorce. She says she can't be the wife of a criminal. All I wanted was for us to have a comfortable life. You don't need the money anyway. It's too late to start living at your age. But you chose to send your own son to prison to avoid sharing. I'll never forgive you. Lloyd. I stared at the letter for a long time, feeling not anger but deep sadness. Lloyd never realized it wasn't about the money. It was about trust, about respect, about basic human decency. He had betrayed all those principles, and even now he saw nothing wrong in it. I didn't answer the letter. What could I say? Our paths had diverged and would probably never cross again. Instead, I finished packing and flew to Paris the next day. It was the first time I had ever traveled alone, and it was both scary and exciting. Paris turned out to be exactly as I had envisioned it: elegant, romantic, full of history and beauty. I wandered the narrow streets of Montmartre, drank coffee in small cafes, climbed the Eiffel Tower. Every evening, I called Patty to see how things were going at the store, and each time she assured me that everything was under control. In Rome, I joined a group of similarly aged American tourists. We toured the Colosseum together, threw coins into the Trevi Fountain, and ate authentic Italian pizza. I became friends with a married couple from Oregon. They had been traveling for 20 years since they retired and had traveled almost all over the world. Life just starts after 60, laughed Martha, the wife. The kids are grown, the work is behind you, and time belongs only to you. I told them my story. Not everything, of course, but enough for them to understand why I started traveling so late. They didn't judge or pity me, just offered to join them on their next trip, to Japan in 6 months. Think about it, Winifred, said John, Martha's husband. Tokyo, Kyoto, cherry blossoms. It's something you have to see at least once in your life. I promised to think about it and exchange contacts with them. Back in Hueytown, after 2 weeks of traveling, I felt like a different person. More open, more adventurous, more ready for new experiences. The store under Patty's leadership was thriving, online orders were flowing, a few new customers even came from neighboring towns after reading good reviews online. You've made a lot of changes in these 2 weeks, I remarked, looking at the updated display case and the new stand with smart gadgets. I hope you don't mind, Patty said worriedly. I wanted to surprise you. It's a great surprise, I said sincerely. You're doing exactly what you need to do. The store has to keep up with the times. In the evening, I stopped by the cafe to see Jenny. She hugged me happily. Winnie, finally! Tell me, how was Europe? Over a cup of tea, I showed her photos, shared my impressions, told her funny stories about my adventures. Jenny listened with genuine interest, sometimes asking questions. What about Lloyd? She asked at last. Only that Darcy has filed for divorce, I replied. He sent me a letter blaming me for all his troubles. Typical, Jenny snorted. No responsibility for his own actions. What did you say? Nothing. What could I say? He made his choice. I made mine. We parted ways. You don't regret it? I've been thinking. Do I regret sending my own son to prison? Yes, of course I do. But do I regret protecting myself, not letting him take away everything I'd spent my life building? No, I finally answered. I don't. Sad, yes, but not sorry. Jenny nodded understandingly and changed the subject. I got home late that night. My small, cozy house greeted me with silence and darkness. Once that silence had depressed me, made me feel lonely. Now I saw it as a part of life, a calm, peaceful part that balanced out the active days filled with work and socializing. I unpacked my suitcase, laid out the souvenirs I'd brought from Europe, and checked my mail. Among the bills and advertising brochures, I found a postcard from Martha and John confirming their invitation to Japan and asking if I had decided to join them. Looking at the image of cherry blossoms on the card, I suddenly realized clearly that my life was not ending. It was transforming. Every ending is the beginning of something new. Lloyd's betrayal was the end of our relationship as mother and son, but the beginning of my new life, a life in which I could finally think about myself, my desires and dreams. I pulled out my day planner and wrote down, May Japan, then thought about it and added, September Egypt? December New Year's Eve in New York? So many places I wanted to see, so many experiences yet to be had. The store continued to operate and grow under Patty's guidance. I was there 3 or 4 times a week, counseling regular customers, sharing my expertise with the new employees we began hiring as the business expanded. But now it was a pleasure, not a burden, to see the business Robert and I had started continue to live and thrive. Hugh suggested we organize a support group for elderly people who had been victims of financial fraud by relatives. I agreed to help. My story could serve as a warning to others, and perhaps prevent someone else from making the same mistake. At the first meeting of the group, I told my story, frankly, without hiding my pain and frustration, but also without demonizing Lloyd. I simply described the facts, explained how I recognized the deception, how I gathered evidence, how I sought help. The main thing I learned, I concluded, is that it's never too late to start defending yourself. It's never too late to say no to toxic relationships, even when it comes to your own children. And it's never too late to start living for yourself. After the meeting, an older woman approached me, shy and intimidated to say the least. I'm in the same situation, she whispered. My son and daughter-in-law have taken everything, even the house they want to sell. I'm afraid, but after hearing your story, maybe I can do it too. You can, I said confidently, squeezing her hand. And you're not alone. We can help you. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night, thinking about all those elderly people who are victimized by their own children, about those who are afraid to speak out, who endure humiliation and hardship because blood is not water, and you can't take it out of the house. Maybe my story will help at least some of them to find the strength to defend themselves. Maybe this is the good deed that I can do in this life. In addition to honest business and raising a son who, alas, did not live up to expectations. I woke up this morning with a sense of peace and determination. Life goes on, and there is still so much to do. Traveling, making new friends, growing the store, helping others. Lloyd made his choice. I made mine. I chose to live life to the fullest, without toxic relationships, without constant fear and humiliation. I chose to respect myself and my labor. And you know what? I have no regrets.